Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. Now, how did you go from, okay, I rated this thing and it's kind of emerged. At what point did you say this out loud to somebody else? This chef thing could be good.
So I made a friend at my work back then, and I told her, I think life is too short. This job kind of sucks. We need to go do something else. And I have
Now,
an
why
idea.
does that job? Wait a minute. You're making a lot of money. You're your own boss. You go in there, and this job kind of sucks. You're hard to please.
Yeah, I think it was sort of a first world problem, I'd admit. But I think I think in different points in life, you need different things. And I really wanted to build a company, and I wanted to build a very big company. So at that point, that job really wasn't cutting it. And this friend actually turned around and said, oh, I love this idea. Actually, there could be something really big that happens. She was my friend, also a peer, and then ended up being my co-founder. Her name's Heinin.
Yeah. And so it's amazing how empowering it can be. I heard a long time ago that, fortunately, I heard it early in my career, that most revolutions, if you're going to build a business or a company, you're going to start a revolution. It's one way of looking at it. And I heard early on, fortunately, that most revolutions are run with very few people at the core. It's not managing thousands and thousands of people every day. You have it's kind of quiet at the core. It's like a nuclear reactor. It's very quiet at the core, and then it spreads out. So it's really empowering. Talk about how empowering it is to find that first key person and how it changes your every day, really, because you wake up, you get an idea, now you can bounce the idea off of them, and they can, it's can kind of create magic and keep the percolation going. Talk about how that changed things for you.
So before Heinen, it was just me and a bunch of my ideas, and I didn't know if I could do it. And I think there was a lot of self-doubt. And I also imagined myself just thinking, I think I assumed a lot more worst case scenarios. And I think I just kind of didn't want to do it myself. So I just thought, whatever. But the moment I found the first person, or I obviously spoke to a few other people, but Heinen and her energy, the moment I just saw it, she saw a world with me that didn't yet exist. And it's as though we were peeking into the future. We could just see what life would look like for people who have birthdays or hire Airbnbs and can just have this amazing service as easy as ordering Uber. And she shared that enthusiasm with me. It was everything. So I feel like it was special. It turned me from a sad little person with the idea who wanted to escape to someone who was super bullish and ready to do it.
Say that again. That needs to be said. A sad little person. Start with a sad little person.
It turned me from a sad little person with a little idea to someone who was confident, ready, and very bullish to take on the world, actually.
Yeah. Like Tom Petty. I don't know if you know Tom Petty, but he's gone now, but he had a long career in music. And my brother worked for him for 40 years. And he said that when they got started, when they got this one drummer, Stan Lynch, he said, once we got Stan standing behind me on all the performances on that drum kit, he said, I felt like we could go conquer the world. I felt like I had a jet engine at my back, like nobody's going to mess with us. We got Stan back there on the drums. And shout out to Stan Lynch, by the way. And anyway, the energy is one way of telling if you got the right person working with you in your core. Is, do they bring energy? Do they create energy with you? Do they charge you up? And that comes from not the personality or but like ideas and enthusiasm, and you could, they make you better because they're provoking you to greatness, and they inspire you with ideas they have and how they see it. But if you don't have that person, probably need to get rid of them, or you not count on them to be the core, have them around. But that's probably the key indicator that this is a person who's going to be in the core, don't you think?
I completely agree. You couldn't have said it any better. I think with Heinen, we weren't 1 + 1 = 2. It was exponential. I think I
Yeah,
just felt we
absolutely.
together were 10, and it
Yeah.
was incredible. It is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, you look for that, and it's not. I'll tell you where you look for that. Uh, uh, you like Berkshire Hathaway with Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, and they had a decades-long relationship like that to created magic. And so that's one of the things where Charlie Munger used to say that a lot of people work hard. A lot of them have, a great idea, but he said the missing thing is the successful people also have good fortune. And I think a big part of the good fortune is stumbling across the right person to work with you. I just think, of all the advantages you could have, that's hard to replicate, So as you went forward, now, how did you go from that point to where you started to get, what was your battle plan? You started to line up chefs. When did you have your first sale, quote unquote?
Almost very quickly when we met, because we decided demand is always more difficult than supply. So, AKA, if someone needs to give you money, you need to get them to part with their money. And that's going to be the hardest. So, we just sort of went out there to all the peers, which we knew could afford this because we worked in that environment. And we very quickly created sort of a PDF, wrote down a bunch of dishes because we knew we didn't have to have a fancy website. We actually didn't even have a chef. And at that point, we sent this PDF of dishes to our colleagues and we said, we would we would love if you book a private chef at cost. And if you're interested, place an order. And a couple of them did. And then they paid for it. So actually, that was our first sale. And then when we had this first sale, which was very quickly after both of us decided to work on this idea, we realized we had to go find a chef.
Yeah. And so was that hard?
But honestly, finding the initial chef, no, because that was always going to be the easy part. There are always going to be people who want to earn money, but people parting with money is harder. So I think initially that bit was fine. I would say the hardest bit was after the initial test with peers, finding the first person we didn't know who would book the service. Like, how do you do that? That is
How do you
crazy.
do that? Now, is that a referral? Now you do that from referrals? Because that's usually the best way to do it.
It is the best way to do it. I think back then, either we weren't as sophisticated or because dinner parties.
Well, let me make a point. Let me make a point there. And that is that entrepreneurs need to realize you're going to have to sell and you're going to have to understand the sell thing. Read sales books, because realize you stay in business and sales if you can get referrals. Because if you can't get referrals, you can't do a good enough job where people feel good enough about you, and then you ask for the referral, you're not going to have anybody else to go to the next time. And so as you where you ran into that was a lack of knowledge about the sales process, and that how important referrals could be for you. You can always cold call or run ads, but that's more expensive, less return than word of mouth. So go ahead and talk. How did you expand into that, your client base?
It's actually so interesting because now we know about referrals. I just think, oh, great, 60% of our business is word of mouth. But now that you ask me about the beginning point, it never even crossed our minds. And I think at that point, we just saw, right, now we have a website. How do we make this live somewhere? And then we just waited and we kind of were like, okay, let's bump into some people, tell them about this idea. It really was very ad hoc. And I remember inquiry coming through this platform, and it was a quite random, but it might have been we really don't know the source. It just kind of was. We didn't even run Google ads. And that person actually said they wanted a chef and they parted with their money. And we like fell off our chair. We were like, oh my God, we've done it. We've
Yeah.
found an unsuspecting stranger to come buy something from us. This is so cool. So I think it was very random. However, that was our first booking. Then the next day we woke up. The person all over Instagram turns out was an influencer and had 8 other friends. So suddenly the next day we saw 8 people on like Instagram using this and talking about their amazing bachelorette and the chef. And I obviously thought I was going to build $1 billion company in like a year because it was so insane. And I thought every booking was going to be like that. I'll tell you that's not how things go. But yeah, that was the first booking. I think it happened and it was very cool. We realized that's what unlocked actually a second word of mouth for us, because we realized influencers will be really big. When people watch something on social media, they have the proof and they trust the person, they will come inquire on Yhangry. So after that, we got a couple more bookings on the back of that, which was very cool.
Now, how did you develop your network of chefs, and how many did you have on board by the time you went on the Dragons, whatever it is?
Dragon's Den. Dragon's Den was right after COVID, and it only aired after COVID lifted. So actually back then we didn't have that many. So currently we work with over 1,000. But before Dragon's Den, it was, I'd say like 60 chefs, maybe 30, 40.
And so you have how many now?
We have close to 1,000 chefs.
I mean, you're like Uber. I mean, you're like Airbnb now. I mean, is that all in the UK?
Yes, currently all of the chefs are in the UK.
For those of you who are sick and tired of fooling around and are dead serious about wanting to move up fast, I've got something especially for you. I've combined the best insights from over 40 years in business and making $70 million in income and compressed them into a free webinar. That's right, it's a free resource. If you want to find out exactly what the concepts are that I use in coaching $1 million earners, register now at WeidelOnWinning.com. You'll discover the 5-part framework used by so many to reach their financial, personal, and professional goals. You can find that link in this episode's show notes.
How did your expansion go? I mean, I would imagine you're pretty much cover the UK now. Is that right?
So we cover all across UK. That is right. I think so. Initially,
who would think there's that much demand for? Or, well, wait a minute. We didn't say they're cooking English food. We said they're cooking.
Correct.
I was going to say, who would say there's that much demand for English food? But anyway,
it's very funny you say that though, because when we started, I am a immigrant Asian. My co-founder is Chinese, German. We didn't have any English food on the menu because we didn't know any. It was just Indian, Chinese, Thai, Japanese. Forgot about British entirely.
You're probably not going to bring in a private chef for shepherd's pie or fish and chips.
You would be surprised how people love to have some Sunday roasts. But yes, I think relatively speaking, people do like to book more sophisticated cuisine and not British.
So how fast did that expand around? How much of an issue was for that? What did you what stumbles did you make as you expanded around the country and those long distance bookings?
I mean, what I'll say is like, oh God, getting chefs has been like a whole learning process in itself. And we went from
1,000 chefs is a lot to keep up with. Quality control and, you got people going and coming all over the place.
Yep. So now things seem a lot more calmer because we've learned our lessons. But back when we started, I remember we used to, we had this hypothesis that if a chef is really good, they can do every single cuisine. Because why not? It's just as easy as throwing some things together. Yeah, it's not bad. And then we had a booking where we sent a chef, and that chef, and it was like we had the worst review ever. And turns out the chef does more healthy, meal prep, nutritious food. And this customer wanted traditional Indian. And it went so horribly. And I just remember phone thinking, I really want to die. Like, I don't want to be on this phone call. Like, I'm so scared. Is the customer going to come through this phone call? And like, what is going to happen to me? And the funny thing is, I survived. I realized that not all chefs can do every single cuisine. And then off we went, tagging every single chef that we hired with the cuisines that they were really good at. And I think that was like one failure. But we've had so many of these like failures while like getting chefs. For example, at some point I thought every single chef should cook for me. And that's how I'll tell that a chef is really good. It sounds sensible. However, I started doing this thing where I would have some random ingredients in my fridge. I'll tell them sort of, hey, like, why don't you put something together? Because you're a chef, like, it'll work. And it was a disaster. Like, sometimes chefs didn't show up. And I was just left with all these ingredients in my fridge. And I was so unhappy. I just thought, God damn it. I just wanted a chef to trial. So my kitchen, like, some food was left over for me. And that's when I realized that model doesn't make sense, because I am again trialing chefs based on some random ingredients. And like our process of screening wasn't that great. I just assumed if they come to my kitchen and cook, they're going to be amazing. But I forgot the initial screening. Like, are you a human being? Are you sensible?
Are you involved? Yeah.
And it was really scary, because one chef once turned up to my co-founder's place and then demanded to be paid for the Uber. And my co-founder said,
no,
that's not how it works. And then they went to her. Really weird, where they got really upset that the pots and pans weren't correct. And after that day, we just thought, right, okay, this is really weird. We need to actually have a very strong process where we check their CV. We actually speak to them about their experience, because the goal is to have professionally vetted chefs on this platform. And I think after making a bunch of that faux pas, we realized, cool. Now we do a video call, we go through their resume, CV, we talk to them about their dishes, where have they cooked, what do they make? And after you speak to someone in depth, you really start to realize which are the ones that are not suited for the platform and which ones are good. Are they going to do a great job? So our screening process is really tightened up. And I think it took us about sort of 2 years to scale from like 20, 30 chefs to like 1,000 plus now. But we've gotten to a point where like the cycle's working, where we get chef applications rather than us going out to chefs, you know? So it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so have you talk about your growth chart. How has that accelerated? What did you use the money for that you raised on, are you a good investment? Were you a good investment for those two dragons?
So we actually did not accept the money on Dragon's Den, because the rates aren't very commercial. You can actually go out there in the market and raise at better amounts. So we did accept on TV, but then we decided that we weren't going to go ahead with it. We did raise around $3 million afterwards. So in 2 tranches, one was from angels, and then one was through Y Combinator, which is like a startup, which is a startup accelerator in US, in Silicon Valley. So we are definitely a great investment, and we have half of that money still left. And what we have deployed that money on is building product. So making sure that the website is super easy to use. If you land on it, you can find all the chefs near you. You can chat to chefs. You can actually customize the menu. You can say, hey, it's my birthday, like my 50th. I have 20 guests. Some of them are gluten-free, whatever this looks like. So this platform is really beautiful and slick. That was the core of it. Marketing is a big piece. And I think although we started a lot of referrals, and it takes time to build word of mouth, where if someone tells their friend, they might have a birthday in the next 3 to 4 months. It's not as immediate. It's like Airbnb, where people use it like maybe once or twice a year. So I think obviously marketing, like finding what are those core channels that will give us a steady stream of customers on the demand side. And then I think it's just people. So like hiring for customer service and operations internally.
We're the size now that, have you got the United States expansion on your horizon?
It indeed is on the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you're the size now that you can approach the Airbnb people or the vacation rental people. And there's only like 1 million of those kind of companies around the world, and tie in with them. It seems like it'd be a domino effect once you start getting those associations going. You don't have to just add chefs now or add bookings. You can add, rental agencies. And
Absolutely.
so that's a great idea. I'd like to get a percentage of the profits from that.
Oh, I love it. Like owning equity is the dream. I love that you asked. I will keep you in the loop.
The thing is, with your great training in writing code for AI, you can just write a program and AI will teach itself how to improve your program and do the expansion. It'll
Yep.
be self-learning.
Only self-learning. Only if I finish that course back in university. But that's okay. Things are easier now.
Well, you could hire somebody to write code for you now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like chefs. They're a dime a dozen. In fact, I read an article this week in in the Wall Street Journal that computer scientists graduates are having trouble finding jobs. So, there you go.
That is wild. Yeah, cool.
It is wild, So you'd think of all the jobs that there'd be plentiful out there, but so it just shows you can't predict. You have to think on your feet. And so, anyway, I'm not going to keep you any longer. We'll save some stuff for your next once you get into the United States and expand to all the continents.
Absolutely, U.S. is definitely next on our agenda.
Well, do you think you'd ever have the guts to expand into India?
I love the way this question is phrased.
Yeah.
Someone just asked me this today, and honestly, I kind of had to take a little bit of a second, and I looked at them and I just said, first, US.
Yeah.
And the reason is how Larry, I spoke about invisible rules and
Right.
kind of go. I just think India is this wild market, and there are no rules, and and I think I grew up in it. It's an awesome country, but it scares me a little bit, and I feel like we will have an easier time expanding in US. And I feel like I don't know how well companies do really going into that world, and you really have to understand that market well. So in future, yes, it is a big opportunity, but I think there are other demographics where people will be easier to make customers of.
My recommendation for you is you keep getting bigger and bigger and let your management team expand. And then once you have someone on board who's proven, who develops this insane desire to take your company into India, you say, go get it.
I love it. That's so true.
Yeah.
I like it, Larry. Yes.
Yeah. Send somebody else,
Okay, I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that is a great strategy. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm proud of you. I'm excited about what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to expanding to the United States. And so I can book one of these private chefs.
Ooh, yes, it's going to be awesome, very cost effective and delicious. And you're not going to gain like your friend back there in Florida did by hiring a chef for a month. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And I'm going to, I always let my guests have the final word. And we like to have a little bit of a extra benefit for the people who stayed with us all the way through. So what would you say, pass on to the people that, are impressed by what you've done, are inspired by it, and would like to do something similar?
What I'd love to say is you really get one life, and you should just think, if today was your last day, would you be content that you went out there and tried and took the shots?
Yeah.
And if you can say yes, that's great. But if it's a no, you should just go out there and try to do the stuff that really scares you, because there is an equal probability of it succeeding than it is of failing. And people dwell a lot on the failures. But you But there's so much success to be had if you just like take that leap and you believe it can happen. So
Yes.
go out there and do it if you feel you need to.
And I would say what I would add from what I'm seeing with your story is that you did it not passively, you did it actively, even when you didn't have an idea. All you had was this desire, this churning inside, like this job, I've got to do more. But you didn't wait for it to come to you like you waited for your first clients. Otherwise you'd have never had the idea. You know, you had a pad, had 100 ideas. Then you took another step that I'd like to point out, that you found a rating system. You didn't, know how to rate it or something, but you saw a rating system that'll work close enough, and that allowed you to evaluate what you had, and to get a factual reason for moving forward. And so take charge. Be aggressive. Come up with some ideas. If you want to do something, and go with what you've got. Follow your instincts, but keep moving forward. And it's just amazing what you've been able to do. And 1,000 chefs, you're on your way. I'll look forward to seeing you in the United States. This has been fun.
Larry.
Thanks so much, Siddhi. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Larry. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the final part of this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. Great ideas don't care who uses them. If you're motivated to move up in a big way, right now, I've created a free training video to remove the mystery on how to set yourself up for big success. This is the information that has changed so many of our lives, and it can have the same impact on you, and the video is completely free. You'll find it at weidelonwinning.com. Join us over there, and thanks for being part of our community.